As anybody that's been tuning in over the course of the last going on an hour and a half now, I believe, if you've been able to listen to all the information, I'm sure that the majority of you recognize how important it is for this type of information to be communicated to every citizen in the state and in this nation, and people around the world as they make decisions, informed decisions, about risk versus reward when they're looking at COVID-19, or when they're looking at a potential vaccine for it, or when they're looking at what we've seen that initiated out of China with these horrible economic bombs, as Dr. James Lyons Weiler had mentioned, that in effect that's what they've had on our economy and on the people's lives in our state. I've said for a long time that our reaction to COVID-19 in Pennsylvania through the governor's office, that Wolf has caused more harm to the people of this state than the virus itself has or ever will. We've had enormous financial impacts foisted upon the backs of our citizens, some that haven't recovered through it. We've seen suicides, of course, as a result of some of the depression that's come out of this economic shutdown, stay-at-home orders, other quality of life issues for people that couldn't get elective surgeries, and on and on. And I'm not telling anyone that's listening anything new. What I would like to share that you might not have heard yet is the part of the conclusion from Judge Stickman, who is the federal judge that made the ruling that Wolf and Levine's actions related to stay-at-home orders, business closure, shutdowns, and in regard to gathering limits on citizens gathering for whatever they might want to gather for, weddings or ball games, wherever they were gathering, when they attempted to limit those sizes of those gatherings, either inside or outside, that all of that was ruled unconstitutional. As many of us have declared from the beginning, Judge Stickman validated our concerns, validated it in a way that only a federal judge could and does. And in his conclusion, he wrote, "The liberties protected by the Constitution are not fair-weather freedoms in place when times are good, but able to be cast aside in times of trouble." He said, "There's no question that this country has faced and will face emergencies of every sort. But the solution to a national crisis can never be permitted to supersede the commitment to individual liberty that stands as the foundation of the American experiment. The Constitution cannot accept the concept of a, quote, new normal, where the basic liberties of the people can be subordinated to open-ended emergency mitigation measures. Rather, the Constitution sets certain lines that may not be crossed even in an emergency. Actions taken by defendants cross those lines. It is the duty of the court to declare those actions unconstitutional." As I said, in regards to those three actions that were taken by Wolf and his Secretary of Health related to stay-at-home orders, business closures, and gathering limits. All of those were ruled unconstitutional, are unconstitutional, and if we went to court over the masking mandates that some have attempted, unconstitutional. If we went to court over vaccine mandates, unconstitutional. We do not give our freedoms up. We do not give our God-given liberties up because we face a crisis, because we have a government. Our government is there to protect our liberties in times of crisis more than any other. And that's what we need our government to do now. To reemphasize, we need policies adopted, we need policies advanced, coming out of the wake of coronavirus and through whatever we're going to face ahead of us as the rest of the year or next year brings. After the election, before the election, we need policies in place that are going to ensure that government protects the ability of individual citizens to make the best choices that they see will result in their pursuit of happiness. Citizens need to be able to make the choice on whether or not they're going to receive a vaccine. Citizens need to make the choice of whether or not their children are going to receive that vaccine. Government needs to make sure that government at all levels does not attempt to mandate that, and if they attempt it, we need to shut that down, because that would be a constitutional shutdown. We need to make sure that government shuts down anybody in the marketplace that attempts to utilize their offerings to the public as a way to coerce people to get a vaccine, whether it's an airline or a store or a pediatric practice that's denying care. Those things should not be allowed. We need to make sure that our citizens are protected in the marketplace, protected in their homes, protected as government does what government's supposed to do, and that's protect our liberty. Thank you for joining us today. I don't think we have any press that's right here in the atrium. We do have one individual here. Do you have any questions for any of our experts?
Wouldn't mind. I know
sure.
We're a little late for the session. First of all, I just want to be very, very clear about what we're talking about. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. In terms of the implication, are you implying or suggesting that Pennsylvanians should not take the coronavirus vaccine?
No. I'm suggesting, advocating for, fighting to make sure that Pennsylvania citizens, individual citizens, are the ones who get to choose whether or not they will receive that vaccine when it's ready, and that they will be the ones that ultimately decide whether that vaccine is ready for prime time, and that they will be the ones to choose whether or not they will receive it based on their own due diligence and their own informed consent.
I'm wondering about Operation Warp Speed, which has been an initiative of the Trump administration, which you and Senator Mastriano have both supported, that billions of dollars are going into in order to rapidly develop a COVID vaccine. Are you suggesting that that effort is dangerous, could be harmful to the American public, despite the fact that both the Trump administration and public health experts are combining their efforts to develop a vaccine?
Well, as was mentioned, part of the process is supposed to involve transparency. So ensuring that those individuals that are developing the vaccines are being transparent, are doing their own research, their own due diligence, that they're actually implementing good science in advancing the product that they're going to offer to supposedly help people, ensuring that they're doing it in a transparent way and they're actually legitimately providing a product that we can trust. I think that myself and the senator and the majority of my colleagues would certainly support having the availability for people to choose whether or not they want it, a vaccine, if they believe that's going to be in their best interest to receive it. But it needs to be done in a good science way, in a way that produces good results and doesn't produce injuries to people that take it believing that it was done in a way that provided for good results and safe results.
Just one last one. We've heard about the CDC, the National Institutes of Health, the FDA. You represent respectfully our government official, as is Senator Mastriano. These are agencies that the Commonwealth regularly does business with, and yet I've heard position after position taken that these agencies and their practices are in question, that the results that they're producing are doubtful. Do you, as a government official, advocate for that position?
Yes. And I think when you see some of the things, just through COVID, some of the information coming out of some of the officials representing some of these organizations, we were told in the beginning, don't mask. It's going to be, more of a risk to put a mask on, because the majority of people don't know how to remove a mask without contaminating themselves if they in fact were introduced to what it is that they're using the mask for. And now all of a sudden the same organization, some of the same officials have reversed position. They're 180 degrees out of sync with where they were at the beginning, and now they're telling you everybody should mask. So when you look at the CDC mandating the hepatitis B vaccine for babies, something that you're only at risk for actually normally getting because of IV drug use or working in a medical field where you're exposed to it, or promiscuous behavior, but to force that vaccine, which comes in three different injections over the course of 6 months, I believe it is, to force that and to try and frighten parents into receiving that, which they've done to many parents that are being rejected from pediatric practices. There's a lot of corruption within government. We've seen it in the WHO. In the World Health Organization, we've seen the corruption there with their involvement with China, with allowing China to launch this biological weapon as it's worked out to be upon the world. Whether or not they designed it to be a weapon, we don't know, but it's certainly the impact has had the impact of a biological weapon, things that Senator Mastriano and Representative Dush and I have all trained to deal with in a combat environment, but populations around the world have had their livelihoods destroyed by this biological weapon that's been released by China upon the world when they knew what was happening with it. And then the world followed China's communist reaction to it by shutting everything down, which was a really bad decision by the majority of countries around the world.
Is there support for your bill to have informed consent as far as this vaccine?
Well, I have support for it. I mean, we're coming to the end of session. I plan on reintroducing in the new session, as long as, Lord willing, I'm standing here again after the election cycle is over. If I'm here again next session, I'll be reintroducing that legislation and working on additional legislation to address these other issues we've talked about here today in the wake of the coronavirus reaction.
Where did you get your information in terms of whether or not there would be a mandate?
Well, there's been articles that have been written where in medical publication that I just read this morning. There's been other articles that have been out there. I mean, there's been a lot of talk around. I mean, there's been talk of mandating the measles vaccine. There's certainly been a lot more talk now about mandating a COVID vaccine.
There's been talk, but has there been anything that communicated, whether from the state officials and federal officials that you have heard of?
I haven't seen anything official that's come, across my desk as of yet, but that's why we're getting ahead of it. I mean, just that people are talking about it. I mean, it's not somewhere that Americans should even go to in their thought process. We are a free people. We live in the land of the free and home of the brave. This is not a place where we should see any medical procedure mandated upon anybody that doesn't choose to have it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our speakers once again. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.